Hello everyone, I hope all of you are safe in the middle of the crisis of COVID-19 and are taking good care of your as well as your family. Today we are going to discuss the certified copies of indirect tax wherein I have scored a total of 86 marks out of 100. In this lesson I would be sharing the strategies with you, how I was able to present very well in the examination, how I was able to memorize almost all the section number, section name, rule name with their provisos and with the notification numbers also of the major notifications, and how I was able to recall them at the time of examination and how I was able to write them in my examination answer sheet. In this lesson, you would learn how to present the answers in your examination and how to manage your time effectively of 3 hours to complete the 100 marks paper. I would also be sharing you at the end what was the strategy of adopting the MCQs and what was the strategy of solving the 70 marks of paper. How did I manage my time so that it would be helpful for all of you. Okay, I would also be sharing what should be the preparation as far as the MCQs are concerned. So in this paper, I have scored a total of 86 marks. If you see the certified copies, 58 marks are out of 70 and they are not out of 100. So for those of you who are thinking that I've just scored 58 out of 100, okay, so that's not true. So 58 here, it is out of 70. And quickly, let's check how much I have scored in my MCQ. So in my MCQ, if you see, the marks obtained are 28. So this is 28 out of 30. Okay, so 58 plus 28, so I have scored a total of 86 marks in my indirect tax paper. Okay, so let's begin with solving each and every question which I have solved in my examination, and let's see what mistakes I made and what are the areas of improvement so that you can have some learnings through this lesson as well. Okay, let's solve question number one advice which I would like to give all of you, this was a mistake which I had made in my examination, that question 1 was of 14 marks and this was a very lengthy and the most difficult question out of all the 6 questions. Trust me, not even a single candidate would have had solved this question initially. I was wrong in solving question number 1 initially. I thought that this question would be easy enough if I proceed, but then in my first question itself, I did a lot of cutting and that was not a neat presentation at all. I would be showing you in my certified copy soon. You would also understand that this was a mistake which I had made in my examination, and I would recommend all of you to solve these type of questions at the end of your answer sheet so that the examiner is quite confident enough to check your answers even if it is wrong. Okay, you have to impress the examiner in the outset itself, as I've been telling you multiple times, and this is a mistake which I had made and I don't want all of you to make this kind of mistake in your examination. Okay, let's solve first question. Sukhdev is a mining engineer. He has crossed the threshold limit for registration under the GST law and is duly registered in the state of Maharashtra. He effects the following transactions in the month of March 19 and wants you to compute the tax payable in cash. He has filed bond LUT to claim benefits from zero rated supplies. This is important. The following are the particulars furnished by him. Okay, let's read each and every adjustment one by one. Okay, so Sukhdev, being an operating member in mining and exploration services at Mumbai High, has provided certain services to the joint venture in which he is also a participant. He believes that the consideration received from the JV is cost petroleum and not taxable. Okay, I'll just briefly explain you what they have asked in the question. Let's see what they have asked in the question. We have to determine the tax payable in cash. Okay, so this is the question which they have asked. Determining the tax payable in cash, which means that after setting off all the input tax credit, be it IGST, CGST or SGST, after setting off all the credits, what would be my liability in cash? Now understand, the liability in cash would include the RCM liability, which has to be paid in cash, and then the set off can be taken. Okay, so the liability in cash would include the RCM liability as well as the output tax liability, which I am liable to pay after setting off the input tax credit on my inputs. This is the question which they have asked. Let's quickly read all the questions first, all the adjustments first, and then I would tell you what is the effect of each adjustment. He has purchased certain machinery from outside the state to render services to joint venture at Mumbai High. He has obtained legal opinion from a local firm of advocates to enter into the contract with the JV for providing services to it. This is RCM. He has obtained accommodation from the state government to locate his office close to the seashore. This is where I had made mistake in my examination. I would tell you where I had made the mistake. He gets a portion of the petroleum silt as a part of the compensation while exploring the petroleum reserves in the Bombay High, which as per the contract with the government is part of cost petroleum. This is included in the consideration itself. He sells the petroleum silt to a SEZ developer in Mumbai. Consideration is received towards transfer of tenancy rights, which according to Sukhdev is not liable to GST as it has suffered stamp duty. On violation of the terms in production sharing agreement, Sukhdev has paid liquidated damages to the government. He has been assigned the right to collect royalty on behalf of government as ERCC, that is Excess Royalty Collection Contractor. He has noticed that the mining leaseholders have short paid 2 lakh as IGST from what had been exempted to him under the assignment. He has sold self-fabricated machinery through his agent in Mumbai that has been used for 2 years, the value of which is not available in the open market. The agent sells it immediately to an unrelated customer in Mumbai. Okay, and the opening balances of credits have been given, mainly the CGST, SGST, IGST, and CGST cash ledger as well as the credit ledger balance has been given. Okay, let's solve the question based on the suggested answers first, and then I would tell you what mistake I had made in my examination, because of which I lost 5 marks in this question only. Okay, let's compute the tax payable in cash. For that, we would need to compute the liability on outward supply first. Okay, let's now analyze each and every adjustment. The first adjustment was of consideration for services provided as an operating member to the joint venture. If you read the circular which is given in the module specifically, these services are specifically taxable to GST, and there is no exemption with regard to services provided as an operating member to the joint venture, because consideration is involved over here. The operating member is providing the mining and exploration service to the joint venture, and thus the consideration received therefore is not cost petroleum and hence is liable to tax. This was supposed to be mentioned in the notes section of your answer. I would also show you how I have presented my notes section in my answers, so that even you have an idea. We have to present notes after solving the entire answer. Okay. Since this is consideration received, it is not a part of cost petroleum. Remember, cost petroleum is a consideration given by the government, and cost petroleum is not liable to tax. Okay. Since this is not cost petroleum, this is liable to tax 12 lakhs and 9% CGST and 9% SGST. Now, compensation received in the form of petroleum silt, which as per the contract with the government is part of cost petroleum. Since it is a part of cost petroleum, as per the circular which we have already discussed in the chapter of supply, if you remember in Unacademy's lecture, I have told you that cost petroleum is not a consideration for service to the government, and thus it is not taxable at all. Okay. Then sale of petroleum silt to a SEZ developer. This is a zero rated supply and no tax is payable. Why? Because it is made under bond or letter of undertaking. Since it is made under bond or letter of undertaking, no IGST liability would be there, because he has signed a bond that he wouldn't be paying the IGST, and therefore there is no requirement to pay IGST. Okay, he would simply claim the refund of the IGST. Like, since he's not paying the IGST, there is no IGST which is involved over here, since he has signed a bond, so there is no IGST separately computed. Now, consideration for transfer of tenancy rights. There is a circular in respect of tenancy rights as well, that transfer of tenancy rights to a new tenant against consideration in the form of tenancy premium is taxable even though the stamp duty has been paid on the same. If you read the module very carefully, this has specifically given in the module, and in the module it has been mentioned that even though stamp duty has been paid, GST law is altogether a different law from the stamp duty law, and thus even if stamp duty has been paid, GST would be liable. The SEC cannot claim that GST shouldn't be liable because we have already paid the stamp duty. Both of the acts are different acts. Okay, stamp duty is governed by altogether a different act. For example, it would be governed by the Stamp Duty Act of Maharashtra, like it would be governed by the state acts. However, GST Act is a central act, that is CGST as well as SGST. So both of them are altogether different acts, and therefore GST is liable even though stamp duty has been paid on the tenancy rights. So GST of 9 and 9% is liable over here. Then sale of self-fabricated machinery. Since open market value of the machine is not available, as per the rule which is given in the CGST rules, the value will be what? 90% of the price charged for the supply of machinery by the agent to his unrelated customer. 90% of 10 lakhs is what? 9 lakhs, and 9 lakhs multiplied by the respective GST rates would give me the amount of CGST and SGST. Since both of them are in the same states, the amount are computed as CGST and SGST. The total tax liability on outward supplies have now been given. The GST liability on inward supplies under reverse charge would now be computed. What does this mean? This means that you are paying the GST under reverse charge mechanism. You are purchasing something or you are paying an amount to a particular person. At the same time, you are deducting the amount of GST and giving it to the government. So this is your cash liability, and you can take the set off only if you have paid the GST liability in cash to the government. Legal services provided by a firm of advocates to Sukhdev, that is a business entity, is liable to RCM, and therefore the amount of 9% C and 9% SGST would be liable to be paid in cash. Then renting of immovable property provided by the state government to Sukhdev is also liable to GST under reverse charge mechanism. If you read the notification number of reverse charge mechanism, this service has also been included in the reverse charge, and therefore 2 lakh into 9%. 9% would be computed as CGST and SGST. Since it is by the state government only, therefore SGST and CGST would be leviable, because this is a case of intrastate supply and not an interstate supply. Assignment by the state government of the right to collect royalty from mining leaseholders to the extent the exemption is not available. This is an important concept and an interesting one. Excess royalty collection contracts. So here the IGST amount of 2 lakh was not paid, and therefore this 2 lakhs has now been considered as IGST amount. If you see in the question, 2 lakhs is the IGST amount. So you don't have to compute 18% of 2 lakhs. See, if you read, this 2 lakh is IGST amount. And you don't have to separately calculate 9% or 18% on this particular amount, because this is the GST amount itself. Okay, so excess royalty collection contract, what happens is that if the mining leaseholders have short paid the GST, the ERCC, mainly that party that has to pay GST to the government on behalf of the mining leaseholders. So there are three parties, mainly the government, the ERCC, that is the excess royalty collection contractor, and the mining leaseholders. If the mining leaseholders have already paid the IGST liability to the government, then there is no need for the ERCC to separately pay the GST liability to the government. The main concept of bringing into ERCC was that if the mining leaseholders have not paid the entire amount, then the ERCC would have to pay the balance amount which the mining leaseholders have not paid to the government, and that would be integrated goods and services tax in this example. Okay, so this amount has now been considered as paid, because I have to pay this amount of rupees 2 lakh as it was not paid by the mining holders, and this is my cash liability. So this is the total tax liability on inward supplies under reverse charge mechanism. Okay, now let's calculate the input tax credit balance. The opening balance is given in the question as 18, 12 and 60. Okay, now we would compute the inward supplies which are not liable to reverse charge, that is for forward charge itself. Okay, so opening balance of input tax credit has been given as 18,000, 12,000 and 60,000. Then there's an interstate purchase of machinery. Okay, so 6 lakhs worth of machinery has been purchased. Since it is an interstate, multiplying it by the GST rate of 5% would give me an IGST credit of 30,000. Okay, now in legal services, as you would know, see, this 9,000 is nothing but the 9,000 which we have computed over here. This 9,000 has been used. Since I am paying this 9,000 under reverse charge mechanism, this is not my liability as such, and therefore after paying the 9,000, I can take the credit of 9,000 easily. Okay. Similarly, for renting of immovable property and assignment of ERCC, the credit of 18,000 plus 18,000 and 2 lakh can now be taken, because these are also under reverse charge mechanism. Understand this concept. The concept of reverse charge mechanism input tax credit is as follows: that you pay the liability to the government, and immediately after paying it in cash, you can take the input tax credit immediately once you have paid the cash liability to the government. Okay, so this is the fundamental of input tax credit. Now the total ITC can be computed by adding all the three figures, which is 45, 39 and 2,90,000 respectively. Okay, there's one more interesting point over here, that ITC may be availed for making zero rated supply even if such a supply is an exempt supply. Okay, so sale of petroleum silt being a non-taxable supply is an exempt supply, but since it is also zero rated supply, ITC can be availed for making such supply. What they're trying to say, they're trying to say that ITC can be availed for making a zero rated supply. Okay, if you remember that in a zero rated supply, you don't have the liability to pay the IGST, that is the output tax, but you can take the input tax credit thereon, despite the fact that it is a zero rated supply. So they have told that even sale of petroleum silt, since it is a non-taxable supply because it is a part of cost petroleum and cost petroleum is not taxable under GST, the ITC can be availed for making such supply, because that is a zero rated supply. Okay. So now we have to compute the tax payable in cash. What would be the tax payable? It would be the total tax liability on outward supplies, which we have computed in the first A part. we would simply subtract the ITC of IGST first. Okay, if you see the ITC of IGST, we have 2,90,000. Okay, this is the ITC of IGST. 2,90,000 would now be utilized, and it would be set off against CGST and SGST in any proportion and in any manner as per the recent amendment made by Rule 88A of the CGST rules. So less ITC of CGST has been done over here. Then we subtract the ITC of CGST and SGST against the same column of CGST and SGST. The forward charge liability on outward supplies payable in cash after set off of ITC can now be computed, and we add the reverse charge liability, that is the reverse charge CGST, SGST and IGST to 31,000 to get the total tax liability to be payable in cash. Okay, we would quickly see the notes which are given over here. Since 12,000 CGST is available in the electronic cash ledger as opening balance, additional 46,000 needs to be paid in cash. So 58,000 minus 12,000 which was there in the electronic cash ledger would be subtracted, and only 46,000 would have to be paid. Payment of liquidated damages to the government. Now, services provided by the government by way of tolerating non-performance of a contract for which consideration in the form of liquidated damages is payable to the government is exempt from GST. If you read the exemptions notification, this particular transaction is exempt from the purview of GST, hence no tax will be payable by Sukhdev on such input service. See what they have done. They have given a rule here. So section 49B of the CGST Act states that IGST credit must be utilized first before using CGST or SGST credit. However, the IGST credit can be set off against C and S in any order and in any proportion. So they have just given in any order and in any proportion. So the answer would vary of students depending upon the amount which they have allocated to CGST and SGST. What I had done in my examination, I had first allocated the entire ITC of IGST towards CGST and the remaining towards SGST. Okay, but as per the recent amendment, we can set off the ITC of IGST against CGST and SGST in any proportion and in any manner. So they have just written a note over here, and therefore this is the solution to question number 1. Okay, so I hope you have understood this question. This was a very complicated one. I would quickly show you how I had presented this in my certified copy. This was a very horrible presentation from my end actually. I would just advise you to not refer at least question number 1 from my certified copy, because I did not like the presentation, but the notes which I had written, that were up to the mark. Okay, I would just show you the notes also once we have solved the question. What I did, see, I wrote the GST over here. I should have it written CGST, SGST and IGST separately. The mistake which I made was that I wrote inter for each and every transaction. Instead of that, I would have simply written CGST, SGST and IGST. That would have been much easier, and it wouldn't have had created so much complicacies. Okay, now see, I had written every, like, beside every transaction, whether it is taxable under RCM, whether it is taxable to GST. See, for example, legal opinion, taxable under RCM. Tenancy rights, it is intra. Petroleum still to SEZ, no GST because it is exempt. Cost petroleum, again it is exempt. Liquidated damages, again they are exempt, so nil. ERCC, it is inter and it is also liable to RCM. And self-fabricated machinery to agent, this is an intrastate, and the rule has been used over here. So I have scored half 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I have scored 7 marks over here. Okay, that's a very good number. I would quickly show you the notes also. Then see, I was very confused here. The output tax liability is as under. I made a mistake over here, and because of this mistake I had to cut this entire page, half of the page. Again I computed the output tax liability, mainly the inter, that is the RCM, then the intra liability, adding all the CGST and SGST. So 4,59,000 includes C and S, divided by 2 to get 229,500, 229,500 and 2 lakhs. Input tax credit including RCM, I have written including RCM. So interstate is what, 30,000 plus 2 lakhs, and the intrastate is 18,000 plus 36,000, which is nothing but the legal services and the tenancy rights which were there. So CGST is 27, SGST is 27 and IGST is 2,30,000. Similar to their working, I was able to subtract the input tax credit from the output tax. See what I did, first I computed the output tax excluding RCM, then we have to pay the output tax of RCM in cash. I have immediately taken the credit here, tax payable under RCM. If you see the credit has already been taken in the next immediate part. Then the input tax excluding RCM credit has been mentioned, and the opening balance has been subtracted to compute the final closing balance. Okay, so less credit of IGST. I have distributed it equally. So this was an assumption in my case that IGST can be allocated in any proportion and in any manner. So I thought that let's distribute it equally itself. The net tax is there, then simply subtract the opening balance of 12,000 to get the total tax payable, that is 5,27,000. Here I made a mistake. I'll quickly show you what mistake I have made. 5,27,000 is not the answer, of course. It is 2,85,000. The mistake which I have made in my answer sheet is this, like this one, the government one. Government inter taxable under RCM. Okay, if you see accommodation from state government inter, it is taxable under RCM. I have been allocated as half mark, but 36,000 is not the answer for that. Let me check. Okay, so it is right, 36,000 is the answer. So I'll just tell you the mistake which I have made. Let's read the notes first. See, this is how we present the notes. See, when a member provides services to the JV in regards to the consideration in the form of cost petroleum, the same is taxable as consideration is involved. See, this is what they had written in their answer sheet as well. The credit of machinery can be taken as it is being used for services provided to the joint venture, and the same is not in the form of cash call because the member has supplied the machinery. Okay, this was given in the module. If you read the module, you would understand this. See, I was very firm enough to write the notification number as well. As per the notification number 13/2017 dated 28 June, services provided by a firm of advocate to a business entity is taxable under RCM. Thus, 18,000 is liable to be taxed under RCM. Services provided by a government to a business entity is taxable under RCM. Further, services by way of renting of residential dwelling is only exempt and not an accommodation for office. Thus, the tax is payable under RCM. Where there is a contract with the government, the cost petroleum is exempt as there is no consideration involved. The JV bears the cost and expenses and hence it is not a supply leviable to tax. See, cost petroleum is exempt as there is no consideration involved. Sale to SEZ is what? It is a zero rated supply, and since Sukhdev has filed a bond, he won't be liable to pay IGST as per section 16 of IGST Act. Despite stamp duty payable on tenancy right, the same is leviable to GST as transfer of tenancy right is not transfer of immovable property but a mere transfer of right, and therefore it is a supply of service even if it is liable to stamp duty. Liquidated damages payable to government are exempt while the notification number of the exemption, I'd remember this. Since there is a shortfall of IGST paid by the mining leaseholder, so they will have to pay the same to the government under RCM. As per Rule 29 of CGST rules, where goods are supplied through an agent and the open market value is not available, the value is 90% of the value at which the agent sells to an unrelated person. So value of supply is what? 10 lakh into 90%, and 9 lakh would be liable to C and SGST respectively. Then as per Rule 88A of CGST rules, the credit of IGST can be distributed in any manner to CGST and SGST. So it has been distributed equally in the absence of any information given in the question. Okay, and the credit of RCM will be immediately taken, but it has to be paid in cash first. Thus, the net tax liability will get added by the RCM liability and will be reduced by the balance available in the electronic cash ledger. So I was able to score 11 and a half out of 14 in this question. So I didn't lose 5 marks here. Actually, I lost only 2.5 marks in this question, maybe because of the presentation and because of some minute error which I'm not able to locate right now, but I would definitely locate it and would mention in the comments box once this video is uploaded on YouTube. Okay, so this is out of 14. So 12 out of 14 is also a decent score in first question because this was the most difficult question which we had been asked in our examination. See, the next question was question number 3A. This is going to be very useful for all of you now. You just look at the presentation which I have done. So it would be useful for all of you. See, question number 3 is what? Mr. Rajbir, a registered person at Delhi, is in the business of selling goods relating to interior decoration under the firm name Mrs. Rajbir and Sons. He has opted for composition scheme for FY 18-19. His turnover for FY 18-19 is 80 lakhs and is expected to achieve 130 lakhs in the next financial year. Discuss whether Messrs. Rajbir and Sons can still enjoy the benefits of composition scheme in FY 19-20. His son Karan wants to start business of providing services relating to interior decoration after completing post-graduation course under the same firm name and wants to enjoy the benefits of composition scheme. Advise Mr. Rajbir and his son Karan. This is an easy question of 5 marks. I would quickly show you how I have written the answer. See, now it is very important for all of you to follow this format in your examination. First, write the section name. If You know the section name and the act. Write the provision, then do an analysis. Okay, so I've written the provision and I've finally given the advice. There was no point in doing an analysis over here because the provision already contained the analysis. That, like, I was wise enough to eliminate the analysis part because I had written everything in the provision. So let's read the answer of my certificate copy. So section 10 of CGST Act speaks about composition scheme. He would be eligible if his turnover does not exceed rupees 1.5 crores. He ceases to be a composition dealer if his turnover crosses 1.5 crores in the current financial year. Further, a person who is a dealer in goods can supply marginal services to the extent of 10% of turnover or rupees 5 lakhs, whichever is higher. See the markings; they have given marks to each and every provision which I'm writing, and I've also written where this was given. This is given in second proviso to section 10 subsection 2. Okay, if you're very shocked that how I was able to remember the provisos as well as the subsections, I've already shared my PDFs with all of you, wherein I have written that each and every section name and the section number respectively, whatever each and every section name corresponds to. I've also written the important provisos number in that PDF itself. I used to read that daily in the morning at 5:30 a.m. and that's how I was able to inculcate all the section name, section number, name, rule number in my mind. And the advice is nothing but conclusion. Mr. Rajbir will be eligible to enjoy the benefits of composition scheme as his turnover is not expected to cross the threshold limit, and Karan can provide services up to 10% of 80 lakhs, which is the turnover in the previous year, or 5 lakh, whichever is higher, that is up to rupees 8 lakhs. Therefore, Karan should ensure that his turnover from supplying decoration services does not exceed 8 lakh, which is this 8 lakh. The turnover will still be rupees 138 lakhs, that is 130 plus 8, which will allow them to enjoy the benefits of composition scheme. This was a hidden adjustment, okay friends? This is very important. The turnover in the current financial year is also given. If the turnover in the current financial year would have exceeded rupees 150 lakhs, then they wouldn't have been allowed to be eligible for composition scheme. Okay, so I computed the turnover based on the revised information, which is 130 plus 8. 138, it is within the limit of 150, therefore they are allowed for the benefits of composition scheme. Okay, I was able to score 5 out of 5 marks in this question. Let's see question number 3b. Surya Agencies has agreed to supply goods to customers' premises. Goods valued rupees 80,000 are taxable at 5% IGST as it is an interstate supply. It also pays freight and transit insurance of rupees 12,000. GTA is a registered entity and has charged GST under forward charge. Compute the invoice value, and what would be the invoice value if the supply was under X factory basis instead of door delivery basis. This is an interesting question. Let me show you my answer. See, the value of supply is simply the goods worth rupees 80,000. You have to add the amount of GST over here because this is the amount which you are going to pay to the uh, agent, to the GTA, goods transport agency. Okay, so freight is what, 12,000 plus 12%. Remember, you have to add 12% to 12,000 or else you would lose 1 mark. 12% is added because you have paid the liability from your own hands. So you have not paid an amount of 12,000, but you have paid an amount of 12,000 plus 12%, that is 13,440, which you would be recovering from the customer by charging a GST on this particular amount and not on an amount of 12,000. So this was a crux in this question, and IGST of 5% has been levied on 93,440 to get the invoice value of 98,112. If you see, I've written the section, subsection, clause. Any expenses incurred incidental to the supply of goods are included in the value of supply. This is given in section 15(2)(c). Thus, freight paid by Surya agencies will be added in the value of supply. See, as the GTA is paying tax at 12%, it will pay tax under forward charge, but the burden of tax will be borne by Surya agencies, and hence the GST is also included in cost. Why? Because GST would be paid under forward charge and it would be borne by Surya agency and not the goods transporting agency, because it is paying tax at 12%. Therefore, forward charge would be applicable and not reverse charge. Let's compute the invoice value if it is on X factory basis instead of door delivery basis. In X factory basis, what is the meaning of X factory? It means that the customer would come to your factory and collect the goods from your factory. Okay, so X factory means that your liability would end as soon as you have dispatched your goods out of your factory. Once you have kept the goods out of your factory, that means that the transaction has happened and your liability of transferring the goods has now ended. The transport would be borne by the customer because it is on ex factory basis, and all the costs would now be borne by customer. Our only liability is to keep the goods outside our factory so that the customer can collect the same. This is a normal definition of ex factory basis. So quickly compute the invoice value of supply. That is nothing but 80,000, which is the goods value plus IGST at 5%, since it is an interstate supply. This amounts to value of supply as rupees 84,000. And I have also written it in the explanation. Since the contract is on ex-factory basis, Surya Agencies is under no obligation to transport the goods, and thus the freight will not be included in the value of supply, assuming it to be a separate contract between customer and the goods transporting agency. Okay, I hope this answer is also clear to you. I have also scored 4 out of 4 marks here. If you see very carefully, I have scored 3 marks here only. So question B, 3B1 was of 3 marks and 3B2 was of 1 mark only. It is very important to add the GST component. This was the crux in this question. Let's see the next question. Question number 3C. During the year 2018, the customs authorities have noticed that there is an increased quantity of product XYZ being imported into the country. Determine whether the central government should consider levying safeguard duty or anti-dumping duty with appropriate reasons. Also, enumerate any exemptions, reliefs available from such duty. This question is of 5 marks. Let's see the certified copy answers. See, I have written the section of Customs Tariff Act as well. Okay, don't get shocked if you think that you'll have to quote all the section name, all the section number, clause name, then only you would be able to score these many marks like 86, 88, 90 out of 100. That is just a myth. I was able to memorize, and my thinking is that quoting section name, section number, clause name, proviso number is always better, because the examiner would be impressed at the outset itself, as compared to a candidate who has not written section name and section number, because that is going to give you a competitive edge and a competitive advantage over other candidates. So don't get shocked or don't get frightened by the fact that you'll also have to remember all these section numbers. I have shared the PDF. What you can do, you can also write all the section name and section number on a separate piece of paper, read them daily in the morning, and trust me, you would be able to recite them, and you would be able to recall them on your examination day and at the time of your examination as well. So trust me, this technique is going to help a lot. And if you want to start it, like if you want how to write, which section name, section number to write, refer my PDF which I've already shared on my YouTube channel, so that you can have a look on that PDF as well. Okay, so as per section 8B of the Customs Tariff Act, a safeguard duty is what? It is imposed when goods of several quantity are being imported, causing threat or injury to the domestic market. See, as I had underlined this, 1 mark has been given for this statement. It is levied in order to protect the interest of the domestic market. Anti-dumping duty is levied when goods are dumped in the market at a price below the cost of production of the manufacturer. This is the definition of anti-dumping duty. See, the section of anti-dumping duty, if I remember it, it is section 9 of Customs Tariff Act, but I was not sure of the section, therefore I did not write the section number of anti-dumping duty definition, and I skipped that section number. Still, I have scored 1 mark here. Okay, so even if you don't quote a section number, that's alright, but you should quote at least the major and the main section numbers of CGST Act. That should be necessary. It is levied either at the normal margin or injury margin, and I've just defined what is anti-dumping duty. Since it is nowhere mentioned in the question that goods are dumped below cost, it is appropriate to levy a safeguard duty. Okay. This was my conclusion, as product XYZ is being imported in an increased quantity. Then I separately wrote the exemptions from safeguard duty. When the import does not exceed 3% of the total imports of the country, and when the article is imported from more than one developing country, and the individual share in respect of each country shall not exceed 3%, and the aggregate shall not exceed 9%. This is given in the module. If you read the module, I think you can memorize this and you can write it in your examination. Then exemptions from anti-dumping duty. When the product imported from a country with which the importing country has most favored nation clause, or is a member of the UN, that is United Nations, then this is an exemption. Then anti-dumping duty should not be levied unless such import causes severe threat to the economy. So even if a country is a member of the United Nations or has a most favored nation clause, but it is causing a severe threat to the economy, then and only then anti-dumping duty should be levied. Duty is levied where the same product is exempt in the exporting country. Okay, so I have scored 14 out of 14 marks in this question also. Despite the fact that this is a theoretical question, still I managed to score 5 out of 5 marks in the theory questions as well. Next is question number 4. Let's see question number 4. Okay. Okay, I'm not like referring to the suggested answers because I have scored 14 out of 14 marks. So the suggested answers are the same. Like I have written almost the same thing which is given in the suggested answers, and I would be discussing the suggested answers only if I have made a mistake or I have lost any particular mark. Okay, let's solve question number 4 now. The following particulars are furnished by Delight Exporters Karnataka, which is duly registered under the GST law. Okay, this is a refund question, Rule 89. Turnover excluding supply of services is given but includes exempt supplies of 8 lakhs and inward supplies of 2 lakhs. Okay. Zero rated supplies are given 12 lakhs. Export services. Non-zero rated supplies are given. Payment received towards zero rated supply, which includes 12 lakh against which services are yet to be supplied. Advance received in the past against which zero rated supplies have been made in the current tax period. Turnover on which suppliers have already claimed the refund. We have to subtract this from the total turnover. ITC on input and input services during the tax period including 89.4 and 4B, and ITC relating to rule 89.4A and 4B. Okay, let's see the question. Okay, so this is the question. You are required to calculate the refund amount. Okay, this was the question. In respect of input tax credit on inputs and input services relating to goods exported. This is also an easy question if you are very much clear about the concept of refund. Okay, first what I did, I wrote the rule number, that is rule 89 sub rule 4 of CGST rules. Then I wrote the formula of refund, which is turnover of zero rated supply of goods and services whole upon adjusted turnover into the net tax credit, where net ITC is what ITC on inputs and input services other than claimed under Rule 89.4A or 4B. Turnover of zero rated supply of services is what turnover of zero rated supply of services as reduced by amount received where services are supplied to a future dated and increased by amount previously received where the services have now been provided. This is the formula. It means that if any services have been provided, have already been provided, but the amount has now been received, then this has to be added in the turnover. If services are yet to be provided, but the amount has now been received in advance, that has to be subtracted from the turnover of zero rated supply of services. The adjusted turnover is what? Turnover of both zero rated and non-zero rated supply of goods and services, but excludes turnover of exempted supplies other than zero rated supplies, and turnover on which refund has been claimed under Rule 89.4A or 4B. Okay, therefore net ITC is how much? 12 lakh minus 2 lakh 40,000. 2 lakh 40,000 is ITC under Rule 89.4A or 4B, and that has to be subtracted from the total ITC to get the net ITC. Turnover of zero rated supply of goods is rupees 12 lakh. That is given in the question. Okay, so I've lost marks over here. Then services is what? 48 lakh plus 48 lakh minus 12 lakhs. 12 lakhs is what services have already been rendered, and the advance was already paid, but the services are yet to be rendered. So that has to be subtracted, plus 14 lakhs, that is 98 lakhs. So they have given me a 0 mark over here. Let's check the suggested answers first. Then I think we can analyze what mistake I had made. Okay, so similarly they have also given the definition as per rule 89.4A and 4B. See, the net ITC is what? It is 9,60,000, which is right. Turnover of zero rated supply of goods excluding turnover of supplies in respect of which refund is claimed under 89.4A and 4B. This is 6 lakhs. Okay, turnover of zero rated supply of services 48 plus 14 minus 12. Even I had done this 48 plus 14 minus 12. Okay, so 48 plus 14 minus 12. Okay, this was the turnover of services. I don't know why I subtracted 12 lakh from 48 lakhs. So this was the mistake which I made. Then turnover of zero rated supply of services is given, so it has to be computed as 48 plus 14 minus 12. Therefore the adjusted total turnover is what? It is nothing but turnover in a state excluding turnover of services plus turnover of zero rated supply of services determined as above plus non-zero rated supply of services minus exempt supplies. So 76, which is given in the question, minus 2 plus 50 plus 10 minus 8 plus 6 plus 6. Okay, so this is the total turnover. And what was the total turnover in my certified copy? It was 76 minus 8 minus 2 plus 12 plus 980 plus 10 minus 6 minus 6. That is 17 lakhs 40,000, which is wrong. It is not 1 crore 17 lakh 40,000. So it is 1 crore 14 lakh. So I had made a mistake here only. Okay, 48 minus 12, 36 lakhs. Okay, that is the mistake which I have made in my answer. So this is the mistake. My mistake was that I have added 48 lakhs separately, and this should not have been added over here. So 9,80,000 amount is only incorrect, Rest all the calculations are correct. Okay, 76 lakhs minus 8 lakhs minus 2 lakhs plus 12 lakhs plus 98 lakhs plus 10 lakh minus 6 lakh minus 6 lakhs. Okay, if you see minus 6, I would just explain you the adjustment quickly. 76 is what? 76 lakhs is nothing but the turnover excluding supply of services, but includes exempt supplies and inward supplies of 2 lakh. Let's subtract 8 lakh and 2 lakh first. So 76 minus 8 minus 2. Then I've added 12 lakh and 98 lakh. What is 12 lakhs and 98 lakhs? Let me explain. Zero rated supply is 12 lakhs and 98 lakhs is nothing but the above computed figure. See, this is 98 lakhs, which is wrong. This is a little bit complicated, but I hope you are able to understand. 98 lakhs. So this is wrong. This was the wrong part. And I ended up scoring 0 here despite the fact that all the other workings were correct. I would mark the other workings in green which are correct, and the wrong one in yellow. This amount is wrong. Because of this, I lost almost 2 or 3 marks in this question. Let's see how many marks I've lost. And the amount of refund has also been computed erroneously because of only one error of 48 lakhs. This was the only error which I made in my computation, and because of this I lost almost 2 marks. Then we have added 10 lakhs and subtracted 6 lakhs and 6 lakhs. So we have subtracted 6 lakhs. Why? Because the turnover, because the suppliers have already claimed refund under rule 4A and 4B of rule 89. 89 4A and 89 4B, the refunds have already been claimed. So 6 lakh plus 6 lakhs. So this 12 lakhs has to be subtracted because the refund has already been claimed, and the rupees 10 lakhs is nothing but this 10 lakhs non-zero rated supply of services. Okay, this is rupees 10 lakhs. I hope you have understood how this adjusted total turnover has come. Okay, so this is adjusted total turnover. This is the wrong figure, and therefore the amount of refund is also wrong as per the formula given in the rule. In fact, I had written the assumption that it is assumed that the turnover of 76 lakh does not include turnover of zero rated supply, and that's why I think I subtracted 48 lakhs and 12 lakhs. That was the reason, but I could not score good marks in this question. So how many marks I have scored? Let's see. 1 1 2, and oh, I've only scored 2 marks out of 5 marks despite writing so many adjustments and so many formula as well as the section number and rule number. Okay, because of only one small error I lost 3 good marks. Okay, so you can now understand what importance it is to write each and every step properly, and you can lose a huge chunk of marks even if you make one small error. I've also discussed in my analysis of certified copies of SFM paper that because of one error it is carried forward in the next question, and I'm losing marks in the next question also. So remember, if there is a question which is related to the earlier question, try to solve that question very accurately and very carefully so that you don't lose out marks on your subsequent question because of the previous question solved erroneously. Okay, that would be the advice which I would like to give all of you. Let's see the next question now. Question number 4B. It is a theoretical question. Oh, not theoretical. Yeah, it is a theoretical question. Dharmadatta has taken voluntary registration and has not opted for the composition scheme of levy. He is aggrieved by the cancellation of his registration under GST. Although he is filing nil returns as he has not conducted any business for the past 8 months, he wants to know the circumstances under which the proper officer can cancel registration on his own. Let's see what I've written. See, circumstances under which proper officer can cancel registration: if taxpayer has not filed returns for 6 consecutive tax periods, composition dealer he has not filed his return for 3 consecutive tax periods, where a person does not conduct his business from the principal place of business, or where a person who has opted for voluntary registration does not commence business within 1 year, and where the registration was granted by way of fraud, misrepresentation of facts, or breach. Okay, this was a 4-marker question. I was easily able to score 4 out of 4 marks. Let's see question number C. Mr. X imported certain goods from a related person, Mr. Q of United States, and transaction value has been rejected. Rules 4 and 5 of the import valuation rules are found inapplicable as no similar identical goods are imported in India. Mr. X furnishes cost related data of imports and requests customs authorities to determine value accordingly as per rule 8. Okay, the relevant data has been given. Okay, cost of materials is $2,000. Fabrication charges are $1,000. Other expenses 400. Other cost 250. Freight 250. Loading charges 100. Normal margin is 20% of FOB. Remember this. This is 1/5 of sales, and therefore it is 1/4 on cost. Okay, air freight is $1,500, insurance is $50, exchange rate is given. The customs authorities are of the opinion that since value as per Rule 7 can be determined, there is no need to apply Rule 8. This is wrong. We can apply any rule. Can the request of Mr. X be legally acceptable? If so, compute the assessable value under the Customs Act. This is a past examination question of old course. If you solve this, this is there in most of the author's books. So question 4C, computation of value under Customs Act. First, I've computed the total cost, mainly material, fabrication charges, other expenses, indirect costs, freight and loading charges. This is the total cost. Then add the profit margin. This was the crux here. It is 1/5 on FOB, so 1/4 on cost. So the profit margin is 1/4 on 1000, that is 1/4 on 4000, which is $1,000. We get the FOB, add the air freight of 20%, which is restricted to 20%, add the insurance to get the CIF value, and therefore the value in rupees is simply $6,050 multiplied by the exchange rate to get the value in rupees. See, if you see, I have written the rules as well as the provisos. As per the fifth proviso to Rule 10 sub Rule 2 of the customs valuation rules, the air freight is restricted to 20% of FOB value. As per Rule 6 of the aforesaid rules, an assessee can apply Rule 8 first instead of Rule 7 by requesting the authorities, the proper officer. Therefore, the request of Mr. X can be acceptable. So if you see, I have scored 11 marks out of 14. 3 marks have been lost in the refund question because of only one small error of 48 lakhs, and because of that error I was not able to compute the refund amount accurately, and therefore I lost 3 huge marks. 3 marks is a huge number. Let's solve question number 2A now. This is an exemption question. Question 2A about an educational institution. Wadmas Limited, providing educational services, furnishes you with the following information for the various services provided by it for the month of March 2019. Receipts from running a boarding school, including receipts for providing residential dwelling service of 14 lakhs, that is 30 lakhs. Then receipts of Gyanudaya, an industrial training institute affiliated to the National Council. Receipts of Lakshya, an institute registered with the Directorate General of Employment. Then receipts of Visit, a commercial coaching institute. Fees from prospective employers for campus interviews. This is taxable because it is from prospective employers and not current employers. Renting of furnished flats for temporary stay. Receipts of Concepts, a commercial coaching institute once again. And lastly, receipts of Gurukul school providing education up to higher secondary. I'll quickly show you how I have computed the answer. Compute the value of taxable supply assuming that all the above receipts are exclusive of GST. This is very simple question. I've lost 1 or 2 marks here, I think. Let's see. Okay, the main part here is that your notes are going to be valued. Okay, even if they have given 1 mark here for each, if I wouldn't have written notes, I would have scored 0 marks. Okay, it is very important to write the notes after your answer which you have computed in the question. Now, receipts from boarding school, that is an educational institution, so it is exempt from tax. Receipts of an ITI, I would quickly show you the notes instead of solving this question. Okay, this is wrong. Fees from prospective employers for campus interviews. Okay, so let's see what is the answer to this. I would quickly show you the notes which I have written. So first of all, I wrote the notification number, and then I wrote the entire provision as per the relevant notification number. See, you have to memorize this notification number, which is very easy, and in any exemption question you can just simply write down this notification number, because in all the exemptions notification, this is the notification number. So notification number 12/2017 CTR dated 28 June 2017. This means that this notification was 12th notification of the year 2017, and CTR means central taxes and R means rates. This is the logic. Services provided by educational institution to its students, faculty and staff. Okay, the following services are exempt. And services provided by educational institution on conduct of entrance examination by way of entrance fees. Then I defined what an educational institution is. An educational institution is a preschool or school up to higher secondary education, an institution which gives qualification recognized by any law, and an institution providing approved vocation educational courses. Okay, so I've written a note for each and every transaction. Now let's see each and every transaction. So receipts from running a boarding school, including receipts for providing residential dwelling services. Okay, see, I've written this will be treated as a composite supply as per section 8 clause A of CGST Act, where the principal supply is providing of service by educational institution. It is assumed that it is naturally bundled, and hence the whole service is exempt from tax. Receipts of an ITI affiliated to NCVT is exempt from tax as it is an educational institution. Lakshya is also an educational institution as it is running a MESC approved by NCVT and hence the supply is exempt. A commercial coaching institute is not an educational institution as it does not provide qualification recognized by any law and thus the same is taxable. Only services provided to students, faculty and staff are exempt since prospective employers are not covered, the same is taxable. So this is correct. I don't know why he gave me 0 marks in the earlier part, but this is correct. Okay, so this is wrong. Renting of an immovable property for residential dwelling is exempt from tax, thus the same is not taxable by this notification. Let's see what their interpretation was in the answer sheet. Okay, so renting of concepts a coaching institute. So this is taxable since coaching institutes is not an educational institution. Okay, so this is taxable only. I've also written it as taxable. So this I'm talking about this one. Renting of furnished flats for temporary stay to different persons. Not exempt since services by a hotel, inn, guest house, club, by whatever name called for residential purposes are exempt only when the value of supply of a unit of accommodation is below 1000 per day. Okay, so this was the crux point. If it is 1000 per day, then it is going to be 30,000 in 1 year. 30,000 by 12, it would be 3,60,000 in 1 year. 30,000 per month and 3,60,000 per year. 5 lakh is greater than 3,60,000. I think this has been given for the month, right? Okay, so this is for the month of March 19. So 5 lakh is also definitely it is greater than 1000 per day. So 1000 per day means rupees 30,000 per month. Since 5 lakh is greater than the particular amount, therefore it is not exempt, and this is a mistake which I made in my certified copy. I just forgot to write this particular point. I thought that renting of immovable property for residential dwelling is exempt from tax. I didn't consider it to be a hotel, so this is a mistake which I made. Then last, as concept is not an educational institution, the service of the same are liable to tax because it does not provide any qualification recognized by law, and a Gurukul school providing education up to higher secondary education is squarely covered by the definition of educational institution, and hence the services are exempt from tax. Okay, so here I lost 1 mark. I think I've lost 1 mark over here in this question, 1 or 2 marks, because of the fact that the services are exempt of renting only if the amount is below rupees 1000 per day, which is 30,000 in 1 month, and since 5 lakh is greater, then I think that's the reason I've lost marks over here. So how much marks I've scored in this question, let's check it quickly. The total number of marks I've scored 1 2 3 4 5 6 7. Okay, so I've lost 2 marks because of only one particular mistake. Okay, I think he has given me only 1 mark over here, so I should have scored 7 out of 8. Okay, I can't help now. So I've lost 2 marks because of one mistake itself. Let's see question number 2b. Oh, I'm sorry, question number 2b. Mr. X has imported a machine from Japan in June for rupees 50 lakhs. However, the machine was exported back in December for repairs. The supplier has agreed to carry out the repairs as the machine was still in warranty period, which would normally take 6 months. The fair cost is 10 lakhs. Mr. X has requested the supplier to provide him another machine so that he can carry out his operations without hindrance. Okay, the supplier has provided him with another machine which was imported during Feb 19. Okay, he has acceded to the request. He has agreed to the request. The value of the new machine is rupees 55 lakhs. Freight charges incurred were rupees 2 lakhs, and you are required to compute the assessable value on the total duty payable for the above transaction of replacement. This is an interesting question. If you read the module, this is given in the module, not exactly, but a similar question has been given in the module. Let's see how I have solved this question. Okay, the concessional duty will be payable if the goods are exported for repairs, provided that goods are re-imported within 3 years, no significant change in the goods is there, and no change in ownership. The customs duty will be levied on the fair value of the repairs and freight charges to and fro. No customs duty would be levied on the replaced machine for a temporary period. Okay, so the fair cost of repairs is what, 10 lakhs. I've added the freight to get the 12 lakhs cost. Okay, so I've scored 0 here. Let's see the suggested answers. Why I've scored 0. Okay, so I think we have to add the value of the machine as well. Special provisions relating to payment of concessional duty in case of re-importation are not applicable in the given case, as the goods exported for repairs and the re-imported goods are not the same. Okay, so this was a hint over here which they had given. I think I missed out on this particular part of the question, and therefore I was wrong in saying that the concessional rate of duty would be applicable. and therefore full customs duty will be payable on the machine received as replacement. So let's see, the value of new machine is therefore 55 lakhs, add the freight charges, then we have to add the insurance charges, which is 1.125%, to get the assessable value, then add the basic customs duty, add social welfare charges, and add the IGST to get the total duty payable. Okay, so this was a mistake which I have made in my examination. I did not compute the duty on the entire amount, I only computed the customs duty on the fair cost of repairs and freight, and therefore I was wrong in computing this duty. So I only scored 1 mark over here. Question 2b, I have scored 1 mark and 7 marks in the earlier part, so I have only scored 8 marks. So this is the question where I have lost major marks. Okay, so I have lost 6 marks in this particular question. Okay, I hope you are learning from the analysis which I am doing. Let's see. Okay, this was the last question. Yeah, I have taken a supplement. So there's a last question now. This is question number 5a. Let's solve this. Question number 5. A taxpayer has suppressed certain facts resulting in short payment of tax. The mistake is pointed out by the department, but no SCN has been issued. As per the taxpayer, suppression is accepted at rupees 12 lakh, and he agrees that the suppression has taken place in Jan 19. He clears the dues on 20th April 2019. However, the department identifies an additional suppression of rupees 2 lakhs in the same month. SCN is issued and the taxpayer represents before the proper officer, which results into an adverse order. The order is passed on 25th May and the taxpayer complies with the adverse adjudication order on 27th June. Determine the tax, interest and penalty payable at each stage. Okay, this is a very interesting question. So first what I did, I simply wrote the provisions of section 74. As per section 74 of the CGST Act, where there is a suppression of tax, the amount payable will be as follows. See, amount paid before issue of SCN is what? Tax plus interest plus 15% of tax. How I was able to memorize all these amounts? They have been given very well in the module. If you read the module, they have been summarized in a very proper manner. That's why I always tell all of you to read the modules as many times as possible. If the amount is paid after issue of show cause notice, then the amount to be paid is tax plus interest plus 25% of tax, which is the penalty. If the amount is paid within 30 days of the adjudication order, then the total amount to be paid is tax plus interest plus 50% of tax. So 50% of tax, 15% of tax, these are the penalty amounts. Okay. Amount paid after 30 days of the order would be tax plus interest plus 100% of tax. Therefore, amount payable on 20th April would be tax, which is 12 lakhs, interest from 20th February to 20th April, which is 12 lakhs into 18% into the number of days, and the penalty, which is 15% of tax, which is 12 lakhs, to get the total final amount. This is the total amount payable. Okay, if the amount is payable on 27th June, which is after passing of 30 days of order, then the total amount payable would be tax, then interest from 20th Feb to 27th June, which is 18% into 127 by 365, and a penalty which is 100% of tax. This is the total amount payable. See, this was also a very good question and it was very scoring if you would have read the module very well and you would have memorized all the concepts nicely. Okay, here I have scored, I think I've scored 5 on 5, 1, 2, 2.5, 3, 4. Okay, I've scored 4 marks. I don't know why 1 mark has been deducted. Okay, that's alright. Let's see question number 5b. Ganesh Enterprises, a registered supplier under the GST law, has committed an offence. Okay, he seeks your advice whether he has the opportunity to apply for compounding of the offence and the consequences arising therefrom. The department has instituted prosecution against the proprietor of Ganesh Enterprises and he is of the opinion that he shall not be able to apply for compounding as the prosecution has not been launched. Let's see. An assessee may apply for compounding either before, during, or after the commencement of institution of the proceedings of prosecution. Okay, this is important. He can apply at any time despite the fact that the prosecution has been commenced or not commenced. So before, during, or after the commencement of proceedings of prosecution. Thus, Ganesh Enterprises can apply for compounding. Then I wrote the compounding fees. So this was important, even though they didn't ask in the question to write the compounding fees. It is necessary to give the answer because this question is of 4 marks. So minimum is what, 10,000 or 50% of tax, whichever is higher, and maximum is what, 30,000 or 150% of tax, whichever is higher. Okay, so I've scored 1 and 1 mark separately for minimum and maximum amount. Once the offence is compounded, it will have to be paid to the department and the prosecution will be deemed to have been terminated. The fees will be paid along with the fine imposed, which will be determined by the commissioner. Okay, I was able to score 4 out of 4 marks in this question. The last question, which is the simplest question of all. The baggage rules. Mrs. X, an Indian resident who was on a visit to China, returned after months. She was carrying with her the following items: personal effects, laptop computer, jewelry, and music system. Compute the customs duty payable with Mrs. X reference to the baggage rules. This is very simple. I wrote the rule number. So as per rule 3, an Indian resident can import personal effects of any amount, travel souvenirs and articles of value not exceeding rupees 50,000. As per rule 5, a person being a lady can bring jewelry worth 40 grams and value not exceeding rupees 1 lakh, provided the person has stayed outside India for a period of more than 1 year. Okay, a laptop computer is exempt from customs duty, and therefore the value would be how much? Personal effect would be nil. Why? Because up to 50,000 it is already exempt. Then the value of laptop is also exempt as per the notification. Then the value of jewelry would be jewelry, as she resided for 6 months, which is not for a period of more than 1 year, the entire amount of jewelry would be liable to customs duty. 6 months, I think it was given in the question which was provided to us, returned after 6 months. Okay, so here there's a mistake according to me. In the question paper which we were given, this 6 months was there in the question paper. Okay, so the time period is after 6 months. She was carrying the following items. So laptop computer is exempt, personal effects are exempt, jewelry would be liable to tax, and the music system would also be liable to tax. See what I have done, personal effects are rupees 75,000. Okay, so what I have done, personal effect are of course they are personal effects, so I have not bought them. They are my personal goods, so they are not liable to customs duty. Laptop is exempt. Jewelry is liable to customs duty as she did not reside for more than 1 year, and music system is not liable to customs duty. Why? Because the article value is less than or equal to 50,000. See, the music system value is rupees 50,000. So the entire amount of 50,000 has been exhausted by the music system, and therefore the customs duty would be leviable only on the jewelry, which is 75,000. So customs duty is 35% of 75,000, which is 26,250. Add 10% SWS, that is social welfare surcharge, to get the total duty of 28,875. Okay, I've scored 5 out of 5 marks in this question as well. Okay, so that's all from my side. I hope the analysis was useful for all of you. Now quickly I would tell you the MCQ aspect. See, I have scored 28 out of 30 in my MCQs. Okay, I don't know which MCQ is wrong. Okay, I wouldn't be in a position to share which MCQ was wrong. I don't even remember the questions. But one advice which I would like to give all of you is that try to focus on ICI material as many times as possible, and as important, like you should give the ICI material a higher importance as compared to other reference books. Remember how I was able to score 28 out of 30 is that I was practicing all the ICI sample questions from the ICI's website. Then I was practicing the sample questions from the previous attempts revision test papers and the mock test papers, and I was also practicing the MCQ questions from the suggested answers of May 19 old course as well as new course. Okay, so MCQs were not given in the suggested answers, but then we were given a lot of MCQs by the ICI in the RTPs as well as the mock test papers. So solve all the MCQs from the ICI material and read the module as many times as possible. Trust me, there is no need to solve MCQs from any author's reference book. That is simply going to waste your time. Focus more on ICI material, and trust me, you would be able to score 27, 28 out of 30 in MCQs easily. Let me give you the examples of MCQs we were asked in our attempt. We were asked MCQs based on these topics. What is the quorum of GST Council? I'll quickly write it. Quorum of GST Council. At our time it was 2/3. Now it has been changed. I think it is 1/2. Then we were asked entry number of Customs Act in Constitution of India. Okay, entry number of Customs Act, which is entry number 83 of Constitution of India. Then we were asked an MCQ based on the central and the state taxes which have been subsumed into GST. This is given in the introduction chapter of the module. Okay, so I sincerely request all of you to read the modules multiple times and read it very carefully, because it is going to help you memorize provisions in a better manner. And one more thing which I would like to tell is that solve the MCQs first. Solve it at 2 p.m. sharp. From 2 p.m. to 2:20 or 2:25, you should finish off with all the MCQs, because in MCQs you don't know the answer or you know the answer. If you know the answer, you have to simply shade here. If you don't know the answer, you still have to shade, because there is no negative marking. You have to bluff. For example, the question is what is the entry number of Customs Act? You don't have time to think. If you know the answer, shade. It is entry number 83. If you don't know the answer, quickly bluff. Whatever it is, based on your luck and based on the risk, you would fetch marks if it is correct. So I would recommend all of you to solve the MCQ part first, and even if you solve it within the first half an hour, you still have 2.5 hours remaining with you to solve the remaining 70 marks of paper, which is more than sufficient time to complete 70 marks. Okay, so that's it from my side. I think this session was useful for all of you. In case you have any queries, do comment in the below section. I would reply in the comment section, or you can just view the Unacademy lectures which I've uploaded. I would also be uploading the lectures on analysis of other subject certified copies very soon. I hope this lecture is useful for all of you and you can take the most benefit out of these classes. Thank you so much for viewing the video.